Um, Needless to say, this is the second Pesach in a row in which we've celebrated with the disruption, the global disruption of the coronavirus pandemic. My daughter Hannah last night, when she was looking through the Haggadah, and by the way, the most important thing to do to ensure that you have a meaningful, fun, interesting Seder is that you have a good Haggadah. There are literally thousands of them. In fact, I think it was in the Globe and Mail just this last week, there was a story about someone in Toronto who donated his collection to the University of Toronto with some 3,000, I think, volumes of the Haggadah. So there are literally thousands of versions of the Haggadah. A really, really good one that I use, is called A Different Night. It's published by Haggadahs Are Us. It's written by Noam Sion and David Dishon, and it's very much influenced by David Hartman and the Shalom Hartman Institute. In fact, on the back cover, Hannah noticed something that was very relevant to the Zoom Seders this year, and that is an endorsement from Rabbi David Hartman, alav Shalom, about this particular Haggadah, in which he writes, "The Haggadah was meant to facilitate a lively dialogue between parent and child, leader and participant. Unfortunately, the Pesach Seder becomes too often a rote reading, a service, catch this, to zoom through, rather than a drama in which people play creative roles. Don't let the printed word paralyze imagination. Talk, discuss the Exodus. You are free. This Haggadah invites you to shape your own Seder." Of course, David's use of the word zoom, back when this Haggadah was written, David's use was about speed. Don't zoom through it. Don't just sit around your dining room table and counting which paragraph will be yours in order to recite that passage in the Hebrew or the English. Rather, the Haggadah is designed for dialogue. It's designed for question and answer. It's designed for education. As I pointed out in the Torah reading this morning, in the very beginning, there's a notion, there will come a point in time in which your children will ask you, what are you doing? What is this ritual about? And that reference, as well as three others in the Torah, become the Arba Banim, the Haggadahs for children. And the comment that Rabbi Harold Kushner writes below the line on page 386 is emphasizes the parent's role in informing children even if they do not ask, gearing our information to the child's capacity to understand. It is better to encourage children, he writes, to ask questions while they are still at home and parents and teachers can respond to them than to wait until others cause them to doubt and question. One other thing I just want to mention is I think the best kunz or joke that was shared this year at Pesach, also about Zoom and zooming through the Seder, but Zoom as we're now using it, was from Boris Johnson, who's the Prime Minister of the UK, of Britain. He said that we all have that relative at the Seder who doesn't stop talking, and that might give rise to the mute button. And that would be, I suppose, the fifth child, the one who doesn't stop asking questions, but on Zoom, where we have the capacity to press mute and to stop that. I thought that was cute. I don't know. Anyhow, when it comes to dealing with the Arba Banim, what we find is that we have what may be some of the best parental advice ever written. The Haggadah suggests that the parents of biblical times had the same essential trouble that we have today. How do we talk to our children such that they will listen and learn? The approach of the Haggadah assumes that parents and children are involved in a dialogue, that there's a question and there's an answer, that there's the ability to dig deeper and to understand and toil with the text such that it makes sense and becomes relevant for us as well as for whatever age-appropriate level our children and adults may be at the Seder table. Which leads to something quite strange in the Haggadah, something that seems quite strange really for Jews in general, since we base so much on our tradition, on the ability to question, to answer. In fact, when you talk to people that are converting to Judaism and you ask them what are the things that they find attractive about Jewish life that they didn't find in their previous religious tradition, if they were brought up in one, many might not have one. But the number one answer is that Judaism values the question. And in other religious traditions, they're so dogmatic that one doesn't question. One doesn't question what the Bible said. One doesn't question what the religious leaders say. One doesn't question what the parents say. One just listens and does. Not in Judaism. In Judaism, we listen and we question. We argue. Which leads to something quite strange, and that is the fourth child in the Haggadah is the child she'eno yodea lishol, the child who doesn't know how to even ask a question. How is this possible? How can there be a child, let alone a Jewish child, who doesn't express wonder? What lies behind that child's silence? Now, some have suggested that maybe it's age, that the child's too young to speak or to understand. We've had a lot of newborns in the congregation born in the last several months. A lot of people with babies in their arms, certainly babies, infants, even young toddlers do not know how to ask a question, and certainly not a question that's relevant to the Haggadah. Maybe the child lacks confidence, is afraid to make a mistake, or is afraid to do something or say something that might embarrass themselves. Maybe the child really does lack imagination or curiosity. Maybe there's some learning or emotional or other kind of psychological problem that prevents the child from asking a question. One of my teachers pointed out that sometimes when the child or the student doesn't ask a question, maybe it's the teacher's fault. Maybe somehow the parents, in this case, or teachers, are not teaching the material in a way that will elicit a question from the child. And so, it's like one of the things I learned is that like everybody in the class fails a test. It's not that the students didn't learn the material, it's that the teacher didn't teach it. So maybe the child she'eno yodea lishol doesn't ask a question because somehow or other we're not doing enough at the Seder in order to generate that question. Or others have suggested that perhaps the she'eno yodea lishol is the orphan of history, of generations. We see this even here in Canada, that the first generation that comes from Europe is the wise child, the child that is comfortable with tradition. The second generation rebels a little bit, is the Rasha. In the name of progress and westernization, rejects the tradition in order to assimilate and acculturate into the society in which we're living. The third generation is the Tam, the simple or pure child who's assimilated some knowledge and perhaps a little resentment, but still has a simple curiosity. And then the fourth generation, she'eno yodea lishol, the orphan of history, is not even at the table. The Baal Shem Tov, a story is told about the Baal Shem Tov, the master of Chassidut, that tells the same thing, that he used to go into the forest, and in the forest he would light a fire, and at the fire he would praise God and recite blessings and dance and so forth. And in the next generation, his students could find the place in the forest. They knew how to light the fire. They could recite the blessings, but they forgot the dance. The next generation, they knew where in the forest the Baal Shem Tov would do this. They could light the fire, but they forgot both the blessings and the dance. The next generation, the third generation, went into the forest. They knew the spot where the Baal Shem Tov performed this ritual, this celebration, but they didn't know anything else. And then finally, the fourth generation couldn't even find the spot in the forest. Maybe the she'eno yodea lishol is the orphan of history of the generations. What's the Haggadah's response? What's the Haggadah's response for the She'eno Yodea Lishol? And perhaps the response even gives us a hint that this child is the archetype of person that we should spend most of our attention on the Haggadah on Pesach. That we want to create an opening, at patachlo. You should open for him, you should open for her, you should open for them the opportunity to ask questions. So the whole Haggadah, the whole Pesach liturgy is designed for the asking of questions. So much so that Rambam says, even if you're saying the Haggadah, even if you're doing Pesach alone, you still have to ask the Manishtana by yourself. You're both the youngest and the oldest at the same time at that Seder, but you still have to ask the questions. Create an opening, prompt the child, coax the child or the adult, the person, into asking questions. And so that begs the question, which aspect of the Seder do you find most effective in responding to the silence of the She'eno Yodea Lishol? For me, I note the Hebrew of the answer to this child. At petachlo, you should open for the child the opportunity for questions. And it always has me thinking about the 2 times in the Seder in which we literally open our doors. A ritual of literally opening our doors, of ptucha, of opening our doors. Now, we all are familiar with the most famous door opening, which comes at the end, when we welcome Elijah. And perhaps you saw the meme that was going through the internet of the door opening and there was just a mask entering, as if Elijah were a ghost or just a spirit entering. But there's a tradition also of opening the door at the beginning of the Seder, at halachma anya, the bread of affliction, of poverty and persecution, in which we say, let all that are hungry come and eat. All who are needy come and celebrate Pesach. The tradition is to literally invite strangers into our homes and to ensure that those in the community that are hungry have bread, matzah, food to eat. Before commencing any meal, Rav Huna, a Babylonian rabbi of the Talmud, he used to open his door before every meal and announce, let all who are hungry come and eat. Why would he do that? According to the Talmud, it's because opening the door is more than just a symbolic act. The first door opening is a reminder that we can't be in the Seder if we've not reached out to those who are in need. Those in need of food, of companionship, of friendship. And how important, kal v'chomer, how more so is that important at this time, at this moment. That's why this evening there's 85 plus people joining Jody and me and my family for a Zoom Seder from not only our congregation, but other people from around the world that are in need of connection, of companionship, of friendship, and of food. Rav Huna understood that Passover, our redemption, only has meaning, only has purpose when we open our eyes and our doors and we see the needs of others. What a powerful lesson. When we open our door, we literally create this opportunity for people to ask questions, and more so than to ask questions, but to symbolically and actually look out and see the needs of others. And at the end of the Seder, when we open our doors for Elijah, we create an opportunity to continue to have wonder through the world. There are literally hundreds of stories in which Elijah appears dressed as a beggar, visiting others as a mysterious guest, testing people for their kindness, perhaps for the first door opening for those that are in need. Let me share with you a story of Elijah that is perfect for Pesach. When Elijah the prophet wanted to see how people were behaving in a certain town, he would disguise himself as a beggar and walk around the streets. He would observe how the people were acting towards each other in the shops, in the parks, in the marketplace, in the synagogue. As he walked, he would blink his eyes, nod his head, shrug his shoulders, stroke his long white beard, or tap his walking stick, as if he were recording what he saw, adding that message to the already bulging sack he carried over his shoulder. He often smiled to himself too while humming a melody as he walked from place to place. One day, he noticed a small cottage. This place needs a great many repairs, he observed: a new roof, better windows, shutters, a gate. Yet there are some beautiful flowers growing in the tiny front yard. Hollyhocks, poppies, mandrake plant. I like that. Weary from travel and hungry too, Elijah decided to stop at this house to rest a while. He knocked on the door. In this cottage there lived a poor man and his wife. The man came to the door. When Elijah asked him for some water to drink, the man invited him in. Seeing how hungry and tired this traveler was, the couple asked him to stay and share their meal. "Come and eat with us," said the good wife. "Eating with a guest makes the meal feel like a banquet, even though we cannot offer you more than what little we have." "Come," said her husband, "we will gladly share whatever we have." And the couple offered Elijah what they had prepared for their dinner. There was a small piece of herring and a thick slice of black bread and some water to drink. The meal was hardly enough for the two of them. When the stranger had eaten and was refreshed, he turned to the couple and said, "Because of your kindness, I will grant you 3 wishes." It's a wonderful story of sharing, no matter how much or how little one has. And so maybe we invite Elijah when we invite the hungry and the needy. Maybe we do that because Elijah is our hope for redemption, the bearer of good news. And when we've done something good, we bring that goodness a little closer. Pesach encourages us to develop an open door policy. We may be celebrating our past, but telling our children our story of the past cannot blind us to the present and to the world around us. The Seder invites us to open the doors of our homes so we can see what's happening outside and open up our minds to new understandings, to new revelations, and to new possibilities of growth. The Seder invites us to teach the silent child in all of us how to speak. And maybe that's why that child is there. V'she'eno yodea lishol, the child who doesn't know how to speak. All of us at some point in time have had that circumstance, been in that place. And so we focus on these children, these archetypes of human beings, especially the she'eno yodea lishol, in order to find our voice for redemption, for ourselves, for our family, for our community, for our world. Chag Sameach.